Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Imperial Lates Online Relationships Edition, the latest in our public event series exploring research at Imperial College London. My name is Dan Simpson. I'm Imperial College's poet in residence, and I'm really delighted to host the event for you this evening, our workshop together. In this Lates Online week, we're going to be injecting your Valentines with a little remote romance, with a programme of after-work events themed to cutting-edge research looking at the world of relationships. Tonight, we are going to be exploring the heart and our understanding of it, both anatomically and culturally as a symbol of love. We're going to be making some heart-themed Valentine's cards that you can send to friends, families, loved ones, and then I'm going to lead you through a quick poem writing exercise. I'm not doing this alone tonight. I have two amazing speakers who are joining us. Before I introduce them, though, I would just like to remind everyone watching at home, this is an interactive event, so please do send us any questions and thoughts in the YouTube chat as we go along. And we would love to see your creations. So if you'd like to share a picture of your work, any of the writing you do later on, you can do that using the hashtag Imperial Lates. And if you go on Twitter, you can do that at Imperial Spark. We can do that on Instagram as well using the hashtag Imperial Lates. And we will share them on the screen if you'd like us to share that back to everybody else. We'd love to see your creations this evening. So as we are a live event and as you can type into the chat, I will ask everyone just to be considerate of each other when you are posting. We'll remove anything that disrupts the experience for others, and I'm sure we won't need to do that across the night. But I think it is time for us to introduce our visual artist and our researcher from Imperial. So joining me tonight is the amazing Maika, who works for MYO London. She hosts creative workshops for adults, and their mission is to help you explore your creative side. Maika is also a pyrographer, which is also known as wood burning. That's a word I learned just before we started tonight. And she runs her own business, Made by Maika. From Imperial, we have Anenta, who is a cardiology registrar, currently undertaking a PhD studentship at Imperial with funding support from the British Heart Foundation. Anenta's research interests include arterial physiology and cardiovascular risk prediction. Yes, I've been practicing those words for about 5 minutes now. So everybody at home, we're going to start our workshop in just a moment. For the workshop, you're going to need the worksheet that we've prepared. That will help you guide you through the workshop this evening. That is in the YouTube video description. It's now posted in the chat as well. So make sure you fire that up before we start properly, and that will help you through the workshop experience tonight. So thank you all for joining us today at Imperial Lates. It's really lovely to have you here. I hope you enjoy the drawing and the writing we're going to do together. I'm really excited for this workshop. We're going to learn a lot about the heart as we go through too. I'm going to hand you over now to Maika, who's going to take you through the first part of our drawing exercise. Maika.
Hi. Oh, I'm really excited for this. So to free up your creative muscles, we're going to do some little sketches, drawings to start off with. So if you get yourself some pens, paper, if you've got colouring pens or pencils, those will be great as well. I'd suggest if you have some scrap paper to kind of just start off on that. And we're just going to experiment with shapes of the heart. So if you think about it, what comes to mind? Are you thinking of the kind of traditional Valentine's heart, which actually they are quite hard to draw when you're trying to get it symmetrical. Or we've got the anatomical heart, which you'll see on your worksheets as well. But have a real play. So really kind of just see what your pen does to just loosen up and get some works with some different shapes. You can go more abstract. You can do one side different to the other. Here's some example ones that I was playing around with earlier. So you can really kind of just play around with the shape, experiment, see what you like, and yeah, just start having a little play. So you kind of also got the kind of really abstract ones here in comparison to the anatomical heart, which you have on your worksheet, and just kind of have a look at the difference and yeah, see what you think as you're drawing and see what kind of images come up. So we'll start off with that. And then turn down, have you got some paper and pens there?
Yeah, lots of colour pens.
I'm going to definitely be focusing on the hosting of this event. I mean, being a poet, that tends to be my strength in creativity. This looks amazing, though.
It's just quite a good way to just not have to be completely conformed to a particular shape.
Yeah.
I think it's quite nice as well seeing how the heart has kind of changed and is presented as well. So this just kind of might kind of lay out an idea of how you want to do your final heart on your card. So,
yeah, I think it's really interesting because obviously the way the heart is displayed in sort of the culture, particularly when it's associated with love, is sort of a bit like the heart actually looks.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to go, how else can we make something that looks sort of heart-shaped based on that biological the biological reality of it. I suppose that's where maybe I'd like to ask Anenta a bit. So tell us a bit about your role as a cardiology doctor and what are your particular research areas with the heart?
Yeah, so actually, can I interrupt for a second to go back to what you were saying about the anatomy of the heart and how they are quite, there's something about the way we draw the heart conventionally, which is very accurate. But actually looking at Maika's version on the left, where she's got the sort of the square, with the squiggles inside, the left side. Yeah, exactly. So you've drawn the left side, what we would call the left side of the heart, bigger than the right side of the heart, and that's really interesting because that's 100% true. So the left side of the heart is far bigger, the muscle wall is far thicker than the right hand side. I mean, yeah, so you don't normally see that, but you've actually just drawn that spot on. So, sorry.
That's nice. Actually, what we'll do is the next step is we're going to break down kind of the steps of how we're drawing our heart. So if you get your final bit of paper, you might have some card. If you just have general paper, you can fold that in half if you're wanting to make it into a card. And yeah, so like you said, Anenta, we're going to break it down into. We'll start with the left-hand side of the heart, which actually appears the right-hand side to us. So it's kind of, that always confused me when I was doing those. So we're going to start with just drawing that one side of the heart, because that's quite a big part of your research, and isn't it, Anenta? Is that why you're focusing on the left?
Yeah, so the left-hand side of the heart is classically received a lot more attention because that tends to cause people the most trouble. I mean, we are learning more about the right side of the heart and how that interplays with the left as well, and it is important as well. But when we conventionally think of the heart muscle not being as strong as it should be after a heart attack, for example, usually we refer to the left-hand side of the heart because it's the one that does most of the pumping, it does most of the work in sending blood around the body. So so our research kind of spans a few different areas, really. I sit between the clinical cardiology side of things at Hammersmith Hospital, but also with the bioengineers at South Ken. And that's just, one of Imperial's strengths, all these people coming together, a bit like we are today, because we all bring sort of different skills and methodologies to the table. So we explore how blood flows through the heart, but also through the arteries, the large arteries, but also the smaller arteries. We try and understand that flow in different ways, and how flow in one part of the body might affect the flow in a different part of the body, for example.
Oh, yeah, that's so interesting. Well, actually, it's quite nice because what the next step would be is actually we're going to fill this section of the heart inspired kind of by the anatomical side of the heart. So actually, we're going to add in some arteries, so to speak. And if you want to just experiment with this, is to try and draw a continuous line and fill in this side of the heart without taking your pen off the page, and just see how long you can keep going and just see what shapes kind of come up. I suppose it kind of makes me think about everything being connected in the heart and how that works, I suppose.
Yeah, so for example, we're drawing what you might say that these are like a bit like the coronary artery. So So the blood, the heart itself supplies the whole body with blood, with oxygenated blood, but it also supplies itself with blood because it's a muscle and it needs its own oxygen, and it does that through the coronary arteries. So the coronary arteries wrap themselves around the heart to give it that supply. And so, you know, as cardiology doctors, one of the things we do is if someone comes in with a heart attack, it's because of a blockage in one of those arteries, and so you can unblock that as well. So with, for example, balloons and stents are the kind of things that you might have heard being used. But yeah, I've got to keep drawing.
I remember when we were talking about this workshop before, we were kind of really enamored with how so much related to the heart is related to romance and love. And this is amazing, Maika. I'm loving how detailed and intricate it's becoming so quickly.
It is, and yeah, it's amazing that actually this is one continuous line as well. But once you've done that, what the next thing, if you do have colours, is to let's fill our this side of the heart with colour, and then start bringing it to life. Oh, it reminds me of those not the drawings, the scans that you had, Anenta, that you were showing us when we were putting this workshop together.
Yeah.
That's what kind of inspired me to kind of like fill this with colour.
So there is an image of an angiogram, which is the kind of the X-ray video that we take to try and understand the coronary arteries. So we do have a picture of that, of an example of somebody who came in with some arteries. I don't know if we're able to show that.
Oh yeah. Oh wow.
So this is different. So there's another image of the left and right coronary arteries. Do we have that? The left one, for example? So yeah, so this is an example of the kind of video clip that we would take where we show dye running around. If we can play that video clip again, of how the dye flows through the arteries. And I don't know if you can appreciate that at the sort of near that, where there's that sort of fork, sort of a three-way bifurcation, we would call it. There's sort of the flow is not so good, and there's a blockage there. So that's those are the kind of images we get, and you can kind of appreciate there that the arteries wrap around the heart in very similar patterns. Yeah,
you can really see how that's coming out in Maika's example there. And yeah, I can see you're starting to when we saw that first image we saw the with the flow going through, that's starting to look like Maika's colors coming in as well.
Yeah.
Such an interesting way to visualize the heart as an anatomical entity.
Yeah, so actually the image that we saw a glimpse of, the colourful flow through the aorta, if we can show that again, that shows you, this shows you a pattern of flow from an MRI scan, and the different colours sort of show you the different flow patterns in different parts of the artery, and there's a lot we can learn about that, and actually a lot of the engineering work at Imperial has been around all the computational simulations you can do of trying to sort of change some of the parameters around this and see how that changes flow patterns, and how that might lead to disease down the line. So yeah, thank you for showing that.
It's amazing the colours as well that come up on
yeah,
that.
I mean, that's somebody who's put a colour, who's put a colour field according to the flow patterns, but it just shows you the patterns that you can get out when you understand. So funnily enough, I've got another picture that I did want to show you, which is from a sculptor called Philip Kilner, and he's actually a cardiologist, I believe, by background, but turned sculptor. And he has some beautiful bronze work, and one is outside the Royal Brompton Hospital actually, and here he's tried to, I don't know if when we were talking about the left side of the heart and the right side of the heart, we also have the atrium and the ventricles. So the ventricles are bigger, they're at the bottom, and they do a lot of the work, but the atria will sit at the top. And from this picture, I think you can perhaps appreciate he's captured those 4 parts of the heart. And the other thing that he's done really well here is captured how blood flows in one part, but not in another at one point, and the heart fills and ejects blood at different times. So on one side of the heart here, it's filling, and on the other side of the heart there, it's letting water gush out as an outlet. So I think that's rather clever. So I just wanted to show you that. But, thank you.
Well, it's a really nice like depiction of the heart as well, kind of visually, like how we were looking at these ones, kind of even just the shapes and stuff that kind of come up. When you think of it, it's lovely to see it in kind of a sculptured form.
It makes me think we've got lots of curved lines here, and like we're doing the continuous line. I was just wondering with your pyrography, Maika, how you draw lines. Like, do you draw, do you stop and start, or do you have to try and keep it continuous, or how does that change things? Because
pyrography, you're burning into wood, so you kind of hit the grains. So it is quite hard to do a continuous line. So often the way that I do it is I kind of I'll lightly burn the line in the direction that I'm wanting to do on the wood, and then I have to kind of keep going back into it to kind of move through the grain, because I suppose it's kind of like the blockages within the arteries that you were talking about, and that I have to slowly tease out the grain and the bumps that each bit of wood brings. And it's very different on different types of wood as well. So it was interesting, thinking about the kind of the lines. And I often, if I'm making a new piece, I'll often look at the piece of wood and the grain and the lines that are going through, and seeing what kind of image comes out from the wood itself. So
no piece of work of yours will really be the same as any other. Is that because of the grain? Wow.
And even if I'm trying to kind of reproduce a design, they always turn out different because each bit of wood is different. So it's
not like our hearts, right? They're all on the same template, but they're all going to be ever so slightly different and unique. Which I think which is lovely. We have a really thank you for your questions coming in on the chat. We've had a really wonderful question, which I think we can all have a go at answering. So our question from Arani Ananda asks, do you think art and poetry should be an integral part of medical training? Will it make for better cardiologists? I think, Anenta, what do you think? Should you look at art and poetry as part of your medical training?
That is a fab question. So understanding the humanities and having a respect for the arts when you're studying medicine is really important, because it's, our work is partly all the science that you can learn from a textbook, but it's also about relating to people and understanding them and helping them through their journeys, whatever that is. So it's not just the technical part of helping them through, and it's about communicating with people, and it really is about understanding people when they come to you. So yes, I think arts always help you stay in tune with the world around you, with society, but also yourself. So it's being a doctor has its challenges, and you see a lot, and that's a great privilege. But you also need to be able to deal with those things and be able to understand yourself. So I think that any arts can help you do that, and it's a really important thing to do. And I think that there is this appreciation of that in medical training. I think that sometimes when you go off into the world and you start, specializing and subspecializing, it can be easy to forget that, and then you're busier as well, so you don't always have the time. But I think it's a great release. For sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely find that about poet. I mean, I'm a poet and I write just to process things going on in my life all the time. I had a really great conversation with a surgical fellow, which makes it a surgical fellow, an actual fellow in terms of at Imperial, and he was saying how it's easy to kind of think of language in a medical context as simply imparting information from, you know, a medical person to a patient or to another doctor or something. And actually, we kind of, language is not neutral, and the way we communicate it is not neutral. We bring so much to it from who we are and how we say those words and the particular words we choose. So for me, I think poetry has a really interesting, and poetry and thoughtful literature like that has an interesting way to, as an interest in, how do we improve communication? Because improved communication can only result in better patient outcomes. We can, you know, you could say the same sentence to somebody and make them, fill them with dread or inspire them to confidence, and they're the same words. So yeah, for me as a poet and a spoken word artist, the words we use and how we use them is so important. So I think, yeah, absolutely, the way, would it make for better cardiologists? I feel that's a big claim for me to make, but I think it would just make for better communication. And if that makes for better cardiologists, then so much the better. How about drawing?
Point out, it's not just about poetry, Dan. Although you're not taking up your pen for drawing today. We draw in to explain things to patients, to show them exactly where things are. And it's great to see there's lots more animation used and little video clips to help explain conditions and things, you know, to patients and the public.
Yeah, definitely.
Visuals can be so powerful as well, and imagine within the context of your work, and then they could probably be very effective. Even just like the visuals that you've shown us, you know, in terms of like video as well. And I mean, at MYO here, our mission is to help people explore their creative side. So we run workshops here, and obviously the workshop this evening, and, you know, just trying to explore the creativity from when you're a kid and you felt a bit more free, and we're trying to coax that back out of people. And just the joy of being able to get a bit creative.
What kind of events do you do there? Sorry.
So we do all sorts of crafts. So we do like lino printing in the studio. When hopefully when we're able to open again, we do pottery, t-shirt making, brush lettering, and watercolor classes. So yeah, loads of different creative things that people can get involved in. And it's a lovely way to kind of, I find art and drawing and the pyrography all like very mindful. So I find it's a really nice way just to kind of, I don't know, wind down at the end of the day or during the day. It's, it just kind of settles you slightly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Do keep those questions coming in. Anyone on the YouTube chat, we can absolutely pose them to Anenta or Maika or to myself. Anything to do with poetry, illustration and drawing, and of course anything to do with the heart. We will happily answer your questions. And if you do want to share your creations as you're going through, that'll be lovely to see them as they're being made. Do use the hashtag Imperial Lates, and we will pick those up. That'll be wonderful. So I can see, Maika, your heart is rapidly filling up with all these beautiful colours.
Yes. So once you've filled in and you're happy with this side of the heart, we're now going to draw the other side. So you can, I know we based this one kind of on a anatomical heart and adding the arteries. So for the other side, we can make it completely different. Think about kind of the shapes that you're drawing earlier, get a bit creative with it. Or if you want to do kind of a more symmetrical one, you can copy and imitate this side that you've already done. So I'm just gonna do like almost like a big, we'll make it a bit more of a jaggedy one here. So
that's flame-like.
Yeah, I thought I went flame heart today. And so now, once you've done the other outside, we're going to fill it with things that you love. Or it can be patterns. If you love colour and patterns, that's fine. Add those in. I'm a big fan of nature, so I'm going to add lots of nature things in there. And think of, I suppose, actually, with all the pop culture like visuals of hearts as well, you kind of, you have the tattoos. You can make it more kind of tattoo inspired. But just get a bit creative with what you want to pop in there. Yes, I I'm a big fan of nature, so I'm going to pop some leaves in here.
Is that how you got into pyrography? Sort of playing with wood or playing with fire? Which one came first?
Yeah, probably nature actually. So yeah, I was working with an arts company, and one of the other artists had one, and my parents have a log burning fire, so I had some logs, so I just borrowed it the machine for a weekend and explored a little bit on the logs that we had at home, and then from there I just kind of, yeah, it took off from there.
How big is the machine, or are they kind of, is it like bicycles you get?
Kind of like a little battery pack, and it's essentially like a soldering iron, and it heats up super hot, and then you use that to then burn your designs into the wood.
I'm really struggling to not make a heartburn pun. Just gonna leave it there. We've got a couple of really great questions coming in from our audience and people taking part in the workshop tonight on the YouTube chat. I love this question from Emily Primer Pike. The liver has also been seen as the seat of love in the past, I guess, in the same way that we now go to the heart, right, as a symbol of love. So what do we think about and this is, I think, maybe one for Maika, maybe Anenta as well. What do you guys think of the possibility of aesthetically pleasing liver-based Valentine's cards?
Oh, well, I think that it's one for next year, isn't it? Or this year. I think it's underrated, isn't it? I mean, this one's had its time. So, yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, all bits of the body should be celebrated. And, you know, the liver, you need your liver.
Yeah.
You need your liver too.
Yeah, it's fascinating how we associate the heart with love, and that has become the dominant image for liking things. And you know, we see that on social media now. You know, sort of Instagram, obviously you have the love heart to show you like something, and Twitter and Facebook, you can do the react with the love heart. Yeah, and the heart has taken on such a deep meaning for all kinds of love, actually.
Yeah, that's so right. And also I mean, even think the imagery of the broken heart as well. I mean, that kind of goes quite far back, doesn't it? And you know, they're quite these tragic images, all the hearts with the daggers in, and you know, I mean, it seems to have the heart's gone through a lot.
Actually, we've got a question from our audience as well, from Tutor Cell, about Heartbreak, in fact. And yeah, I think I've definitely used the heartbreak emoji a few times in my life. And yeah, we see that broken heart in two. And Tutor asks, has heartbreak been seen to have any physiological effects on the heart? One for Anenta, I think, that one. Okay,
yeah, so very good question. So heartbreak can do all sorts of things to people, can't it? So it's an acute emotional reaction sometimes, and there is this condition called Takotsubo syndrome. It's also called broken heart syndrome, and it refers to an acute stress, like a bit like an emotional stress, that can make the heart behave as though it's had a heart attack, and it hasn't. The coronary, often people present and it sounds very much like a heart attack, but you go on to do an angiogram and you find that the coronary arteries are nice and normal, and actually you then find out a little bit more. I remember a lady telling me that actually it was the middle of the night, and she was saying it was the evening of her 90th birthday, had been about a week ago. So I noticed that from her, you know, that it was just recently, and I said, "Oh, happy birthday." And then it turns out that her family had only just arrived from abroad to come and celebrate with her, and it was that excitement of meeting up with them all that actually she had completely normal arteries, very healthy arteries, but it was that excitement. So it can be heartbreak and something sad, but it can also be something that's happy and joyful that can cause your heart to go into this kind of acute stress reaction. It looks like a heart attack, but it's not. And it can be quite serious. It can be serious, but we know how to manage it, and often it's settles.
So why do we feel when we have those sort of more extreme or quite full-on emotional reactions or responses to things? Why do we feel that as the pressure in the chest? And it does feel like, you know, heartbreak and stress and tension. It seems to gather here often. So why is that?
That's a great question to which I'm afraid I don't know the answer. I think it's plausible to think that there's a psychological element to that as well. And there's something tied in with how we think of the heart. And I think we underestimate the power of, the power of words, but also just concepts and ideologies in society. And so, for example, if you speak to people from different parts of the world who live in very different cultures that maybe haven't also been exposed to the same TV programs and films and all the rest of it, living in cities, but if you go back to sort of different cultures, you might find that people have different ways of expressing themselves and expressing that pain, which actually when we go to do, for example, the angiogram, we find is exactly the same disease, but people describe it in very different ways. So I imagine that there's a cultural element to that. But there are also effects of stress, hormones, for example, on the heart. We talk about the fight or flight response and things like that. So it may be that, for example, your blood pressure might be going up, and it's so very high that you feel that. Of course, blood pressure is, you often don't feel that, but yeah. So.
Wow, amazing. Really, really fascinating. And yeah, I think you're right. It's interesting. We kind of prime ourselves for where we're going to feel a particular emotion. Yeah, absolutely, based on what everybody else tells us. And because we see the heart as so dominant in culture, we kind of expect that's where heartbreak is gonna hit us here. Of course it is. Amazing. We have one audience member who's going to show us their work in progress so far, as we're seeing Maika's coming together really beautifully. Yeah, it looks great. So let's have let's see this one from one of our audience members. Oh, I'm loving those colors.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's a really interesting shape as well, and all the color.
And I like that sort of, it's a bit like a shadow on the bottom there. That's that kind of, so when we were speaking about the right and the left side of the heart, the right side sort of wraps itself around the left heart, which is a bit conical. Yeah.
I thought you were going for a diagnosis there, Anenta. There's a shadow on that. We'll investigate further.
That is a beautiful, healthy heart. Good
to hear.
Hey Dan, have you got any poems that you could read to inspire more things to add inside on the right side of the hearts?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about heartbreak, and as a poet, it would be very remiss of me to have zero heartbreak poems. Love is such a go-to theme for, I think, so much art, and poetry is absolutely saturated with love poems. Last year I decided to try and write a poem every day of the year, and publish it on social media and stuff, which was a great challenge in January and February when I was out and about in the world, and then there was less stuff to think about and talk about since March onwards, but I did manage to do it, and I definitely wrote a few about hearts and love and things like that. So here's a short one around heartbreak and I suppose recovery from that, and it just goes like this. We hold each other as we have been holding our own bruised hearts, not gently or with delicacy, insecurely trembling, forgetting how to take care, but with a subtle strength, knowing when to let go and set each other down safely. It's a big responsibility, isn't it? Holding someone's emotional well-being in your hands a little bit. I feel like that when you get romantically involved with somebody, and I feel like I'm giving them a piece of my heart in a way and saying, hey, could you look after this for a bit? That's how I visualize it, and that feels like a big decision. So
it made me think about the how Anenta was saying the left and right kind of. Would you say that the right kind of I felt of it embracing the left hand side of the heart. I don't know. Your poem just kind of made me think about that. The kind of each side of the heart embracing each other as well.
Yeah. Yeah. They're dual, aren't they? You have the left and the right, and yeah, I think that you can understand why the heart has so much metaphorical, imaginative language built around it. Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, we're thinking about heartbreak. We're thinking about maybe and romantic relationships and romantic love around Valentine's Day, and yeah, we feel that heart beating faster. And we've touched on blood pressure a little bit there, Anenta. So yeah, that's your area of research. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you sort of look at blood pressure, what your particular interest is, and what you're sort of finding out in your research.
Yeah, absolutely. So for a long time now, we've used blood pressure as a way of understanding somebody's risk of developing heart attack or stroke in the future. And this is based on studies that were done a long time ago. They were very good studies, and they showed that if your blood pressure was higher, and as it goes further higher and higher up, you have a higher risk of having a heart attack or stroke in the future, and potentially from dying from that as well. And so there have been lots of efforts in trying to reduce blood pressure or to treat blood pressure with medications if need be, to try and mitigate that risk and or reduce that risk. And so we also have evidence that actually when we think about blood pressure the way, I'll draw it for you. This is very crude, but when we think about blood pressure, I don't know if you've ever had it measured or seen a loved one have it measured, but you get a high number, top number, which is called the systolic number. Normal is 120, and the lower number is 80, and it's measured as millimeters of mercury conventionally. And when you think about pressure flow in the arm, for example, or any of the arteries, actually it goes, this is a very crude drawing, but it goes, and it's probably back to front, but it goes something like that. And as you can appreciate, it's not just about the highest and lowest numbers. It does a lot of variation in the middle. And we have found that there are far more useful numbers buried in that, what we call a waveform, that gives us more useful information about somebody's risk in the future. And so one of the challenges has been how you can measure all those things. So when you put a cuff on the arm, it measures the peak and the trough, and you can understand that that's a fairly simple thing to do. But actually, a lot of the clever machines that we have that people can buy at their pharmacy, for example, even to measure their blood pressure at home, actually do have the capability to give that whole pressure waveform. And if we can do some clever maths on that and actually correlate which parts of that that waveform are the most useful for people, then that could arguably be more useful than just having the top number, the bottom number. So yes, and the reason why that's really important is because if a lot of people, blood pressure isn't well controlled in a lot of people who do have it, and it would save a large number of events, cardiovascular events, if we could get blood pressure under control. Of course, it's also about things like industry playing a role as well. There's a lot of salt in processed foods, and this is something that can, society-wise, leads to higher blood pressures. So there are things we need to do on individual levels, and we can do to help ourselves. But there are also things that need to be done from a societal level as well.
Yeah. So you touched on sort of diet there, I suppose, and the way the industry sort of creates food, and of course, there's individual responsibility too. We hear a lot about sort of yoga and running and meditation and all of the things we're supposed to be doing for sort of taking care of ourselves. Is there anything around sort of that well-being, self-care stuff that has been shown to sort of lower blood pressure or have good outcomes for people who engage in those practices?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, especially now as people are really thinking about how they use their time for their physical and mental well-being at the same time. And there is evidence that yoga can be beneficial, particularly yoga with breathing exercises as well, interestingly enough. However, there's also evidence that disputes that. So the jury is still out, but I can understand why that's such a difficult question to answer, because when you improve your mental health through whatever means, you're also more empowered to think about your physical health and make good choices towards good, positive physical health as well. Whereas when your mental health isn't taken care of, then it's very hard to do the other. So, of course, they feed into each other. But I think a practice like yoga can only really be a good thing for your overall health. And taking time for your own health is important. Having said that, because yoga is often thought of as exercise sometimes, I'm not sure it is. I think it's a sort of a different sort of active practice, maybe, if you think about the meditative side of it as well. And I don't want it to take away from exercise. So overwhelmingly, the most important things with blood pressure is making sure if you are overweight or if you're obese, that is managed. And that if you are taking in too much salt, so if you're taking in more than a teaspoon a day through all your bits and pieces of food and drink, not just your home cooking, but through crisps or, sauces, pasta sauces, things like that, ketchup. So if you're taking more than that you bring that down, and that you also do the kind of exercise that gets your heart racing, and you get very, and you get sweaty from it. So just to be mindful that yoga is beneficial to your health generally, but the evidence on blood pressure is equivocal, and there are other things that we know are definitely more important.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anenta. That's really good to know. We had a less of a question, more of a comment in the where was it? Oh, there we go. Yeah, Lara commented on our chat tonight. So if you'd like to also make comments and questions, please do keep them coming in the YouTube chat as we go. We can pose any questions to Anenta and Maika and myself as we go through tonight. And yeah, keep those images coming as well. We love to see your creations as you're making them over the workshop tonight. So Lara Mystery said, I love the idea that cardiologists use drawing in their work. So you gave us an example of that, Anenta, showing us that very brief diagram to show blood pressure. Yeah, I'm interested in where else you use drawing. And also, I maybe want to see how your picture's going, if that's not too cheeky to ask.
Let's have a look.
It is cheeky since you're not doing your own one.
I know. I will show you my poems later. Don't worry.
So it's work in progress, but that is my heart so far. But I've slightly gone. Maika's looking at me like I've been.
I love it.
Lovely.
I've gone slightly off based on the instructions and trying to kind of work it out. But
I love that. This is what's so. That's why I love doing these kind of workshops, because you can give. Obviously, I've been giving basic instructions, and I know there's some examples on the worksheets, but everyone will make something different. And it's just really lovely to see the different shapes and colours and styles. And yeah, I suppose it's kind of reflective of our own hearts, isn't it? Every bit of our hearts is different to one another. Yeah. So
we have to go back to Lara's question. Sorry, I didn't answer it. So routinely, no, we don't. When we're learning anatomy, for example, in medical school, or when we're learning anatomy further down the line, the specifics of the coronary anatomy, we might draw pictures for ourselves to try and help us learn it. When we're explaining things to other people, so our colleagues, so it's lifelong learning. You're learning from your colleagues all the time, and my bosses will draw out pictures to explain things to me, for example, and go through the steps of how you do things. And then, like I mentioned, sometimes we'll draw things out for patients, just a quick sketch, sort of a back of the envelope thing, but it's very helpful in trying to show that to someone. And actually, it's nice because it's a physical thing that people can then take away if they want to as well, and they have that to look at and something to visualize, to try and, it can sometimes be a lot of information and it can be a bit overwhelming. So just using different ways of presenting things to different people, I think cannot be a bad thing.
Yeah, we have a lovely comment here from Jay Vernon. Kind of relates to that, who says, just to say, I enjoy watching the artist's camera view. I wish we did more teaching with a document cam like this. Yeah, I think it's looking it's looking absolutely fantastic.
It's quite a satisfying thing to do or to watch. I know that I often watch quite a lot of artists' little videos of how they make things, and it's just very therapeutic to sit and watch. And to do as well.
That's less true for poetry. Watching somebody just like furiously typing and then pondering about whether that word is okay, deleting it all and starting again. I think that would be much more dull to watch, to be honest. This is really, yeah, I mean, we're talking about sort of meditative practices, and we have things like ASMR, which have become really popular that seem to calm people down and put them into a sort of trance states or sleeping states. And yeah, this seems really similar to me. I'm not going to ask you about the research papers on ASMR and blood pressure and Anenta, don't worry.
Good, but well, I don't think anyone's done it actually. There's something for someone to look at, I imagine. I was going to say though, Dan, don't you do a lot of work with groups of people constructing poetry together as well? So that there's something about that where the process is shared and out there for everyone to do together.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Running a lot of workshops with groups of people from students and in primary and secondary through to university, and adults as well. And actually, doing poetry work in mental health settings and well-being settings. There's something about just nailing a particular thought or idea, something about yourself you get to share with other people, and poetry can really do that. So yeah, there's definitely a catharsis to that, and it's something in my work that I'm exploring more and more, actually. It's certainly, I think, useful for people. But what I'm more excited by is that we have more pictures from our audience tonight. So let's throw up a few of these. I think we have, we have 2 pictures coming in. Let's have a little look at those. Oh, we have that's amazing.
Someone else who has
lovely contrasting sides as well there. Looks effective. So nice.
And we have another one coming in.
And then the side of the heart we saw earlier. Oh, that's lovely. I love all the dots on the inside and the detail on that side.
Are they mini hearts within the heart around the edge?
Yeah.
I like that a lot. That's great. Fantastic.
Beautiful. Yeah, we'd love to see more of your pictures. And do tag us all in social media. And you're continuing, you can always continue outside and add extra color or details around the outside of your hearts, and just keep going and working on them. So Dan, how did you get into your poetry? I mean, is that something you've always done? Was it when you were a kid you were always writing, or you kind of grew from?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and if you're anybody who works with particularly sort of primary age children, they seem to just throw themselves at most stuff without worry, without nerves, without fear. When it comes to arts and creativity, that's not true for every child. That's not true for absolutely everybody. But on average, they're much more willing to take risks, be vulnerable, and just try stuff out, because that's the nature of being a child. And so, I was one of those kids who'd write and I'd draw and I'd sing and I'd, it's playing with this stuff we're able to do and create. And I definitely, working through the age groups, you just see that instinct get slowly more, I think it's still there, but it becomes less of a confidence thing in terms of being able to express that stuff. The fear of failing, the fear of looking a bit silly, the fear of not making something that's good enough. So that's a really tricky thing. So I wrote poetry in primary school. I wrote bad teenage emo poetry. And then it fell out of my life for a while. I just stopped writing. And then going to university, I kind of picked up the drama society and really started enjoying performing and growing in confidence with that, and realizing, compared to what Anenta does or anybody who works in the medical profession, the worst thing that can happen is people don't laugh at a thing you thought was funny. And really, who cares? That you can learn from that, move on, and then get better at it. It's not that big a deal. So came to that realization, and writing and performing at uni. And then I kind of rediscovered poetry as a way to keep that practice up. So I really got into spoken word by being able to write a piece, go to an open mic and share it. And I was doing that around 12, 13 years ago, decided to try and make that a job, which was, my heart went a little bit quicker when I realized that's what I had to do. And that's about 10 years ago or so, and I've been doing it ever since. I see that we've got a comment from our producer saying that they'd love to hear some of my teenage emo poetry. It's all been burnt. Don't worry, that's absolutely not going to happen. Maika would have been good at maybe Get rid of that for me with her biography. All right, so we've got one more picture to come on, and then we'll move on from our drawing. And obviously, if you're not quite finished yet, you can come back to the drawing and illustration and colouring side of things. Oh my gosh, these are wonderful. Look at these.
That's
Oh wow,
wonderful caption.
nice colours as well. I love the shapes.
I love the duck.
Oh yeah,
That's
that's
fantastic.
wonderful. That's so cool.
These look like stained glass to me.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Amazing. Thank you all so much for sharing your drawings. Keep them coming along with any of your questions for us as we go through. Anenta, yeah.
Could I please ask Maika a question? And it's about, so something that someone once told me about when you're painting and you're picking out colours is that it's all about the relationships of the colours to other colours. And when you're doing your woodwork and you're trying to, I wonder just how you get tones and colours out, even though actually you're probably working with a very narrow range of colours, but actually you probably see a whole lot more in that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because in the different types of wood as well, there are completely different tones of where the grain is and what type of wood it is will have different kind of almost patterns and shading already in the wood. So I try to work with that. Like I was saying before, I will put the bit of wood on the table and look at it for a day or so to see if I can see the design in it, and then kind of work from there using the kind of patterns and shading and tones that are already within the wood. And then on top of that, to kind of enhance it, I will alter how hot I have the pyrography pen. So I can put it up super, super hot, which will get you very dark lines, which will actually kind of burn quite deep into the wood. Or if not, if I'm doing a much lighter shading, I want a softer kind of design, I'll have it on a very low setting, so it has just a small amount, so then I can do lighter shading. So, but yeah, it's interesting in terms of how, even though I'm just using it for like kind of the black and white essentially image, you can kind of get the kind of feeling of color within there.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on to the final part of our workshop tonight. So we thought as we've talked about poetry and Valentine's Day being a place for both the heart and the words of the heart, we'd do a very speed write poetry exercise for you. So you could, if you're feeling brave, write this directly, but I would suggest getting a scrap piece of paper or firing up a document on your computer. Grab your phone, whichever way you find you write easiest. I'll take us through for about 10 minutes to write a really speedy Valentine's Day poem. So the first thing I need you to do is decide who this card is for, if you haven't already. I mean, this doesn't have to be for a partner. This could be for a friend. This could be for family. Hey, maybe you want to make the card for yourself. Maybe that's what you need. You're absolutely welcome to do that. So decide who this card is going to be for, first of all, if you haven't already decided that. And first couple of prompts for you. All I'm going to say is write down a sentence for ending each of these beginnings I'm going to give you. So what would you like to say to them? Here's your beginning of the line. When I think about you, I finish that sentence. All of these prompts are on the worksheet, which you've got as well. So refer back to that if needed. But your first
answering the end of that sentence.
Finish that sentence. Yeah. When I think about you, whatever comes to mind is the right answer. We're not writing the poem yet. We're just generating a bit of material. Whatever comes to mind is right. Your second prompt, I'd like you to finish this sentence. You always something.
This could get dangerous.
That's could be good or bad. Well, I mean, luckily this is a draft. You can edit it before you give it to the person. Your next prompt is, I remember when we, and if you're writing this for yourself, this could be really lovely and self-reflective. So your third prompt is, I remember when we. Your next one is, when I see you, I feel, can be just one word, doesn't have to be a particularly extensive sentence. When I see you, I feel something. Your next prompt is, I love it when you something.
There's so many things.
So many things. You can go back and revisit these prompts. Yeah. Your next one is, you never something. And then let's turn to the future for the last prompt. One day we'll something. One day we'll something. So just finish those sentences off. When I think about you, I remember when I see you, I feel. I love it when you never, one day will. All right, so finishing off those sentences, that's your first part of the writing exercise. Next thing I'd like to do, next little section on your page, I'd like you to write down some sentences where you see the heart used in the world. These are just whatever you've seen the heart used. So how you feel about that. So we've talked about a few of those over the workshop already. You might see emoji hearts. Sometimes we do hand gestures with our fingers and to make the heart going like that. Obviously, we see them on Valentine's cards. The I Heart NY t-shirt is very famous. Tattoos we've talked about. People draw hearts on school books when they have crushes on each other. We see hearts in video games used to represent life force or hit points and things like that. So just a couple of sentences about where you might see the heart and how you feel about it. These don't have to be very long, just generating a few different sentences. Of course, we also see the heart in medical settings. So 2 or 3 lines on that.
Also, if you need to go back to any of these sentences, they are on the worksheet. So I think that has been, if you don't have that, that will be posted up again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so 2 or 3 sentences about how you see the heart used in the world, the pop cultural references, the medical settings, how we see the heart. If Emily, you'd rather write about the liver, you're obviously welcome to. If you'd rather bring it back to the liver as the seat of love, I'm not going to stop you doing that.
I do feel bad that we've neglected the liver now,
I know, we have to do a follow-up workshop. I don't know what a liver expert is called. Anenta, do you want to?
A hepatologist. So one of my friends is a hepatologist. And I feel that, yeah, we need to give the heart more love.
Amazing. All right, so your final part of the sort of generation exercise is in the document you'll see there's a whole bunch of really interesting scientific expressions. All of these I went and read heart research papers to cull these amazing sentences from. I think scientific language is often thought of as unromantic or clinical or logical and cold. I don't think it is. I think you can draw some really interesting expressions from these, from this scientific language. So just go pick a couple that you like, copy them and paste them into the document. That's the third part of the material you're going to be working from to make this short and sweet poem. So just have a little look through those. A couple of the ones I liked were, it is based on very basic mechanical principles. I quite like waves generated by the heart. I mean, come on, that's romantic already. Waves generated by the heart. I quite like a constant peak aortic velocity. Ooh, doesn't that sound good? I really like which enhance the validity and novelty of our findings. I mean, maybe that'll enhance the validity and novelty of your poetry. Yeah, pick a couple of those.
We've had a couple of comments actually. So a shout out from Olivia to her pal Lizzie. Happy Valentine's Day, buddy.
Ooh, I'm going to give it one of them. One of them.
And then going back to the liver, so from Emily, in medieval Islamic society, the liver was the center of love and passions. And I think Galen thought the same. So that's quite interesting. Yeah, maybe there is a space there for the liver to come through next year.
I feel like there'll be maybe card manufacturing companies going, we need to produce some liver-based Valentine's Day poems, cards now. Just increase the market for that. All right, so I asked you to finish those sentences off, write some ideas that you have around the cultural use of the heart, and then finally pick some of those interesting scientific sentences, expressions that you've got on your worksheet there. And to make this really quick and easy, to turn this into a poem, all you have to do is just combine that material from your three different sections, I should say. So whatever feels right to you. Don't overthink it. It doesn't have to make complete sense. If it sort of feels right to you in your head, slipping in a scientific expression next to a thought about the pop culture, adding in a little bit of heartfelt stuff for the person you're writing this to, whatever order feels right for you. If you're writing this by hand, you can just number those sentences to arrange it. If you're doing this on a Word document, cut and paste it together in a way that feels interesting. I think for me, I really love doing these cut-up exercises with poetry. It takes us away from writing just directly what our brain is going to, which often leads to cliche. It often leads to obvious expression that we've heard a million times before. By approaching it from these different angles and taking a little bit from each and mashing it together, you often end up creating something that's interesting and original. And for me, that's what we can do with poetry. So bung these together, cut them up, see how they fit. Do they contrast? Do they juxtapose? Have you ended up with a nice inadvertent rhyme? That's quite fun. And see how that poem looks. Obviously, you're welcome to work on that a little bit more in your own time. It's pretty hard to write a poem in just 8 minutes, but hopefully you've got something that's slowly and surely shaping into an interesting poem. And I can see, Maika, you're putting some of these words around the outside of your heart, which looks so good.
Yeah, I've decided I've gone for a line. So I've gone for crazy waves generated by the heart to travel again.
Oh, so nice.
I thought I'd add that round. I love the way that you kind of cut it up and you kind of mash it together, because it really, I suppose, in the way that I was getting people to just draw lines and see what shapes come up, it's a lovely way to kind of take you out of being like, I've got to write a poem. But actually, if you break it down, it's a really nice way to experiment.
It's really silly to set out to write a poem. Like, that's a ridiculous thing to ask anybody to do. It's impossible. So yeah, no, absolutely, like, kind of generate some interesting words, write about stuff, and then bringing the interesting stuff together and just seeing what happens. It's going back to that stuff I was saying about being a child and playing. I think this idea of play is so important. And that's true about the drawing as well. Drawing an illustration is something that scares me, and I have the adult fear of being vulnerable and risking and failing and not making something that looks good. But breaking it down like you've done into this exercise is, a way to make it manageable and easy and doable, and yeah, it's amazing. So if you at home are creating poems and creating your illustrated cards, we'd still love to see them, so do post that in the chat on the YouTube. We have about 10 minutes left or so of our workshop, so final questions for any of us to do with the heart and art would be lovely.
Very good, Dan.
Thank you. I didn't prepare that earlier, but I should have done. All right, this is all coming together really nicely. So yeah, please do share your examples from home, please. And of course, after the workshop, if you do finish these off, take your time. Please do send them in later. We'd love to see your finished cards. And of course, if you send them to people, what they thought of them, which hopefully is lovely stuff. Oh, that's looking so good.
Yeah, I thought I had a little bit of
those waves
lines, the waves lines. I was thinking about the blood pressure lines, so I thought I'd add those in. And then was talking about earlier.
So good. All right. Amazing stuff. So yeah, final chance for questions and comments. I've got another one from Lara here, actually, who asks, Anenta, I wonder why you decided to become a cardiologist. Is it something you've always wanted to do?
Oh, that's a really good question. I actually was first inspired when I had a lecture from somebody who, one of my current bosses now, actually, Professor Alan Hughes, who showed us images of flow in the arteries, very similar to the one that I showed you at the beginning. And I just love the fact that you could be able to compute all this and try and understand it. And then, funnily enough, it's the procedural side of things that can be very satisfying, and the great thing about our sort of medical education and training is that you get exposure to all the different fields of medicine, and you learn something from every job that you go to and every different specialty that you learn from. You really do. But the thing that really interests me is being able to see people when they come in and they're really sick, but being able to do something practical to deal with that. But then also communicating with the team and the patient. That's the kind of a day at work for me that doesn't feel like a day at work. So that's how I sort of got into cardiology and I've stuck with it. So
fantastic. We've got a really lovely comment from Katrina as well, who says that, Maika, your drawing looks amazing. And they're saying this has been a really lovely session. Oh, thank you, Katrina. That's so nice to hear. Katrina says, it's so interesting bringing these different realms together. How did the idea of this workshop get put together? Well, that's a very behind the scenes question, isn't it? I mean, I'm definitely somebody who's interested in the intersection, the differences, and where art and science come together. I think they are often seen as quite distinct and different, but for me, scientists and artists are trying to do the same thing. We're just trying to look at the world, understand it, dig a little deeper into things, and then present that back to everybody else to affect change, right? And I feel like that's a scientific process, that's an artistic process. So I think they come from very similar human instincts and desires. So I mean, that's the theoretical answer for why this workshop exists. I think practically, what I love that Imperial do are these Lates events that try and communicate science in these interesting ways.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that from, I'm a clinical researcher, so something that's really important for us is speaking to people about, that's where we kind of get our inspiration from. And when we talk about the different specialties, sort of the different disciplines at Imperial, as clinicians, what we bring is sometimes sort of patient experiences or their voices or the questions that we realise haven't fully been answered when we're trying to treat patients. So it's a big part of our day-to-day job, but it's also a big part of our research lives as well. And so for me, doing my research at the moment, it's really nice to be able to engage with people. With members of the public, with creative people like yourselves, and just to think about things in different ways and ways that we wouldn't have thought about things before.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you ask about that question about how this workshop came together, because I came in after we knew we wanted to have cardiology and drawing and look at the cultural use of the heart. And then when I was asked to do this, I just said, I have the perfect poem that I've already written. It's a few years old, that is a synthesis of these exact things. So I thought I would do that poem to round off, get us towards the end of our workshop this evening. So one of the things I'm interested as an artist in doing is sort of exploring different forms of poetry. And one of the forms I'm interested in is concrete poetry or shape poetry. So it's kind of poem that's in the shape of the thing it's about. So if you saw a poem written in a big wiggly line, that's a poem about a snake or a river. So I decided to write my own shape poem. And actually the poem ended up being about the heart very directly.
Wow.
So I'm going to perform this shape poem for you. So we're talking about shapes and drawing. We're talking about the heart and love. And this poem hopefully brings all that together. So this is just simply a shape poem. And it goes like this. This is a poem-shaped shape poem, with some really very long lines that go on for much longer than you might expect, and some that don't. Sometimes it's hard to fit the thing you want to say into the right shape. The words are all there, but they're messy and end up all over the place and don't look like anything at all, certainly not like a poem. There is no shape to an insult or an apology, a compliment or a secret, no outline that can contain happiness or anger, joy or grief. I mean, so what that you wrote your poem in the shape of a heart? That doesn't mean your poem is more loving because you fit your words into a certain shape. And hearts don't actually look like that anyway, simple lines and curves. Hearts are messy and unformatted, irregular, each one different, following no fixed pattern or standard template. Hearts are folds of muscle around emptying and filling space, continuous with the body. Arteries stretching away to capillaries, lifelines of blood, alive things. So do not pin your heart to the page. Stop it beating to help shape a poem. Don't fill your heart with words. Fill your words with heart. Let them skip beats and be unsure about what exactly they're trying to tell you. Your heart flutters and palpates in a tumble of half sentences anyway, stops and starts like line-broken thoughts, begun and left, unfinished. Your heart makes mistakes, disregards the edges of people, jumps into our mouths where words go to die, trail off, incomplete. Love is not a shape poem, meaning and form in harmony. You can't always write inside the lines, so you shouldn't even try. Shapes and hearts and love and all that lovely stuff. All right, we are coming to the end of our workshop, but we have more images to show you from our participants, 3 of them, in fact. So let's fire those up as a lovely way to bring our workshop to a close. Let's see what our workshop participants have made. Oh, wow.
That's beautiful. Look at the colours.
It's lovely.
Wow.
We're loving that one. Thank you so much for sharing. We've got some more coming in. Weirdly, that was a strawberry tooth that looked like a heart. Anyway.
Oh, look at these shapes.
Oh, I love
Is that a donut?
Oh,
It's all about interpretation, isn't it?
that's great.
That's fabulous.
So much detail going on in there as
I'm
well.
loving the line around. There's a line of poetry around that heart. I can
look at this. So this is a really nice example of just using like the 2 tones. All the patterns and the detail in there. It's beautiful.
I think it says one day we will hug again. Oh
yes, hopefully one day. That's a really lovely heart. Thank you so much for sending these in. Keep sending them. Tag us all in. The social media handles are on your worksheet. I'd really love to see what you've made. Tag MYO in so we can see all your beautiful designs. Dan, that poem was absolutely beautiful. It was so nice.
Thank you. It's one of my faves. It's a crowd pleaser. I enjoy that one a lot. Thank you all. So we're coming to the end of our time together. I hope everybody has really enjoyed illustrating, drawing, coloring, making beautiful hearts for loved ones, and hopefully maybe even made some poems as well. And I'd love to see any of the writing you've created as well. So as Maika said, you can send in your stuff. The main channel for Imperial that we'd love to hear from on Twitter is Imperial Spark. You can do MYO London as well. If you want to tag me in anything, it's Dan Simpson Poet. I've got Anenta's your Anenta on there, so it's Anenta with an R on the end. And finally, Made by Maika. If you would like to share your drawings, illustrations, and poems later on. That is absolutely lovely. I'm sorry if we don't have enough time to come to all of your questions and comments and pictures, but please do follow up with us on those social media channels, and we would love to see them. So massive thank yous. Thank you, Jackie. I'm seeing thank yous coming in on the chat. How lovely. Final thank yous from us. So massive thank you to Imperial College London for hosting us this evening and for putting on this wonderful event in the lead up to Valentine's Day. Obviously, huge thank you to Maika and Anenta. Thank you to our producers behind the scenes, Holly and James. They're doing all of the whiz tech stuff, making it all look amazing. Just to say a couple of things. A link will be posted in the chat to an evaluation form. This all works better when we get feedback and you tell us what you enjoy and what we could do better. So do please take a couple of minutes to fill it in. That is greatly appreciated. And if you've enjoyed this event, you could actually send it to a friend. There'll be a recording of this workshop on the Imperial College London YouTube channel. So watch it again, share it with friends, and go back through those exercises, make new art. And if you have enjoyed the event tonight, check out the final event of the week, the Publius Quiz, which is tomorrow at 7:30, where you can pit fact against fiction. You can find the link to register for that in the chat as well. There's another Imperial Lates coming up. We talked about this amazing way of sharing research, engaging with science. And the next one in March is going to be themed on the sun. It's always so fascinating. There's always so many interesting things going on. And again, you can see that in the chat if you'd like to register for any of those sun-based events next month. So thank you all again for drawing and writing with us. Thank you for sharing your creations this evening. That's it from me. That's it from Maika and from Anenta as well. Yeah, thank you all so much. I hope you have a lovely Valentine's Day, whatever you get up to.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.